What if your biggest fear actually came true? What if you failed your exam, lost your job, or your dream project just collapsed in front of you? Imagine this. You walk into an exam room, and the very first question looks like it came from another planet. You check the cover page again just to make sure you're in the right room. Nope, still the same subject. At that point, even Google wouldn't save you. Now, here's the thing. In that moment, you've got two options. Either panic, sweat through your shirt, and turn into a nervous wreck, or take a deep breath, keep a cold head, and remind yourself, even if this doesn't work out, I already know what to do next. And that's where the secret weapon comes in, a plan B. See, most people think having a plan B means you don't believe in yourself, that you're already preparing to fail. But in reality, it's the opposite. A plan B doesn't make you weaker, it makes you stronger. It gives you freedom, because when you know you have a backup, fear loses its grip on you. So today, we're diving deep into this idea. Why you should always have a plan B, how it keeps your head cool under pressure, and how it can actually make your plan A stronger.
Let's be real for a second. Failure scares the hell out of us. Not because of the actual event, but because of what our minds do with it. Think about it. You're sitting in front of a test, or about to give a big presentation, and suddenly your brain starts painting the darkest Netflix drama. If I fail this, my life is over. I'll never recover. My parents will disown me. My career is finished. I'll probably end up living under a bridge with a cardboard sign. That spiral? That's what kills you. Not the failure itself, but the story you tell yourself about it. Here's the truth. The human brain hates uncertainty more than it hates pain. That's why even the idea of failing freezes us. We start thinking in extremes, either total success or total disaster. There's no middle ground. And when your brain believes there's only one shot at life, suddenly the pressure becomes unbearable. And pressure is the enemy of performance. The higher the stakes feel, the lower your ability to think clearly. That's why people blank out during exams, athletes choke in finals, and even the smartest ideas die in silence. Because fear paralyzes action. But here's the twist. When you have a plan B, the story changes. You know deep down that even if you fail this test, lose this job, or screw up this launch, it's not the end. You've got another path waiting. And that knowledge cuts fear down to size. Having no plan B is like walking on a tightrope with no safety net. Every step feels like life or death. But with a net under you, suddenly you can walk with balance, maybe even try a trick or two. So the real question isn't, what if I fail? The question is, what will I do next if I fail? Answer that, and fear loses its power.
Let me share something very personal. During my time in medical school, I almost lost everything. At one point, I was expelled and had to return facing the toughest challenge I'd ever had, passing 2 major subjects in 1 semester. According to the rules, that was the absolute maximum load. 1 subject I managed to pass, but the second one, the exam, nearly destroyed me. Here's the irony. The more I was afraid of failing, the lower my grade became. Each time I walked into the exam room, I was already shaking inside. I didn't even need a professor to scare me. My own fear did the job perfectly. But something shifted. By the time I was facing another retake, I had already thought through what I would do if I failed. I had a backup plan in my head. I knew where I would go, how I would continue, what steps I would take next. And suddenly, that fear that had been suffocating me, it lost its power. I walked in with a sense of calm, not because I was sure of success, but because I was ready for failure. And that's when I finally passed. Having a plan B didn't mean I wanted to give up. It simply meant I wasn't putting my entire self-worth on the line in that one single moment. And sometimes, that's exactly the thing that saves you.
Here's the paradox. Most of the time, you'll never actually need your plan B. But the magic is not in using it. It's in knowing it's there. Think about walking a tightrope. If there's no safety net below, every step feels like death itself. Your legs shake, your balance is gone, and sooner or later, you fall. But if there is a net, even if you hope you'll never touch it, your body relaxes. You move with more confidence. You're free to focus on the performance instead of obsessing about the fall. That's exactly what a plan B does. It's your safety net in life. It doesn't mean you're expecting to fail. It doesn't mean you're weak. It simply means you're smart enough to remove the paralyzing fear that failure is the end of everything. Some people think having a backup plan makes you less committed. I'd argue it's the opposite. When you're not crushed by the thought of absolute ruin, you can give your plan A your full energy. You're bolder, more creative, and much more willing to take risks because deep down, you know you'll be fine no matter what.
Anxiety is like background noise. It's always there when you're walking into an exam, applying for a job, or starting a new project. And when that noise is too loud, it drowns out everything else. Your focus, your motivation, your creativity. But here's the thing. The human brain calms down when it knows there's a backup option. That's why students who already have a side gig or a skill to fall back on tend to walk into exams with less fear. It's not that they don't care. It's that they know one bad grade isn't the end of their life. I'll be honest, the times when I felt the most nervous were exactly when I had nothing to fall back on. No backup, no plan, just the one fragile chance of success. And it showed. My hands would sweat, my mind would go blank, and everything I studied would vanish in panic. But the moment I had a plan B in mind, I became calmer. It wasn't magic, it was logic. And here's the paradox. When you're calm, you perform better. You think clearer. You make smarter decisions. You recover faster from mistakes. In other words, having a plan B doesn't make you weaker, it makes you stronger. It allows you to play offense instead of defense.
Let's make this real. Plan B isn't just some vague backup. It's practical, and it can look different depending on where you are in life. Take students, for example. Maybe your plan A is to become a doctor, engineer, or lawyer. That's the dream. But your plan B could be learning a parallel skill, like medical translation, coding, or even teaching, something that keeps you financially stable if the main road gets blocked. It doesn't mean you gave up. It just means you're smart enough to create options. Or let's talk about work. Your plan A might be climbing the corporate ladder in one company. But companies fail, bosses change, industries collapse. So your plan B could be building a freelance portfolio on the side, networking outside your job, or investing in a small side business. Then, if one door slams shut, you don't end up standing outside in the rain. And in life, it's the same story. You might put all your emotional energy into one relationship, one friendship, one dream. But if you forget that people can leave, plans can collapse, and dreams can shift, you'll end up crushed. A plan B could simply mean keeping your individuality, your hobbies, your passions alive, so you never lose yourself completely if life surprises you. Here's the key. Plan B isn't about being pessimistic. It's about being prepared. The strongest people I've met weren't those who never failed. They were the ones who knew they had options even when life didn't go according to plan.
Some people hear plan B and immediately think, if I have a backup, I won't fight hard enough for plan A. But that's just a myth. In reality, the opposite is true. Think about it. When you're hanging by a thread, terrified of falling, you don't perform at your best. Fear paralyzes. It makes you desperate, and desperation rarely leads to brilliance. But when you know that even if plan A fails, you won't collapse into chaos, you'll have another route, that gives you freedom. Freedom to focus, to take risks, and to be creative. It's like playing a video game with only one life. You'd move slowly, hesitate at every step, and probably get crushed by the first enemy you meet. But when you've got a few extra lives, you play differently. You're bolder. You're willing to experiment. That's exactly what a plan B does in real life. It gives you permission to push harder without being paralyzed by the thought of losing everything. And here's the twist. Often, having a strong plan B actually makes plan A more likely to succeed. Because instead of burning out in fear, you operate with a clear head, steady hands, and the quiet confidence of someone who knows they're not walking a tightrope without a safety net. In other words, Plan B isn't a distraction. It's rocket fuel for your ambition.
Now let's get practical. If I've convinced you that Plan B isn't weakness but wisdom, the next question is obvious. How do you actually build it? Firstly, don't think of Plan B as something completely unrelated to your life. You don't need to prepare to become a circus juggler if you're currently studying medicine. Plan B works best when it grows out of your existing skills, passions, or resources. For example, a medical student might explore opportunities in research, health tech, or even medical writing. See the pattern? It's still connected, but it opens a different door. Secondly, diversify your skills. Think of skills as tools in your backpack. If you've only got one screwdriver, you're limited. But if you add a hammer, a wrench, and maybe even a power drill, suddenly you can handle a lot more problems. That's what learning new skills does. It multiplies your options. Then, focus on creating small, low-risk experiments. Instead of waiting until Plan A burns to the ground, start planting seeds for Plan B now. Maybe you take a part-time course, start a side hustle, or simply network with people in a different field. Don't underestimate tiny steps. They compound over time. And finally, Plan B shouldn't just be a backup career. It could be a financial cushion, a different city you're willing to move to, or even a mindset shift that allows you to reinvent yourself. The best Plan Bs are flexible, not rigid. Think of it like chess. A good player doesn't fixate on one move. They anticipate what happens if things go wrong, and they're always 3 steps ahead. That's how you need to think about your own life. Not locked into one outcome, but prepared for multiple possibilities.
So here's the truth. Life will never follow your script. Sometimes you'll win, sometimes you'll lose, and sometimes you'll get completely blindsided. That's just how the game works. But having a Plan B doesn't mean you expect failure. It means you respect reality. Think about it this way. Pilots always prepare an emergency landing route before takeoff. Not because they want to crash, but because they understand that safety comes from preparation, not from blind hope. Shouldn't we treat our own lives with the same seriousness? There's an old saying, safety rules are written in blood. They only exist because someone made a mistake so costly that the rest of us had to learn from it. And in life, it works the same way. Every person who burned out, who failed without a backup, who gave up because they thought there was no alternative, they're writing silent safety rules for us. We can either ignore them and repeat the same pain, or we can take the lesson for free and build our own Plan B before we need it. And here's the irony. Once you have a Plan B, you'll notice you start walking into Plan A with more confidence. Fear loosens its grip because you know that even if the worst happens, you're not stuck. You've got a way forward. Remember this quote, "The man who has one plan is a prisoner. The man with 2 plans is free." Let that sink in. So, if you've been putting all your eggs in one basket and praying it won't break, maybe it's time to stop gambling with your future. Build your safety net. Write your Plan B. Not tomorrow, not someday, today. Here's something important. I know that talking about Plan B in theory is one thing,
but applying it in your own life is a whole different challenge. Sometimes it helps to have an outside perspective, someone who can look at your situation without panic or pressure. That's why, if you feel stuck and want to talk it through, you can always reach me by email. No pressure, no big promises, just a chance to look at your options together. Because sometimes sharing your plan B with someone else makes plan A even stronger. And hey, if this video gave you even a spark of perspective, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that plan B isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Because at the end of the day, it's not about fearing failure, it's about being ready for whatever comes next.